The Laura Ingraham Show. Matthew Vadum. I've been botching his name pronunciation, which I always get on other people for doing with my name. And meanwhile, I did it with his name for the last few weeks. But he writes for the American Spectator, and he's written most recently about ACORN's man in the White House. He brings us the latest as a trial of ACORN is now underway involving these voter registration falsifications. And we'll see how that all plays out. But Matthew joins us now. Matt, how are you?
Hey, how are you, Laura?
I'm doing great. Now, the president with George Stephanopoulos looked like he needed to buy a vowel when asked about ACORN. I didn't know they got that money. I didn't know they got money. Well, that's other issues that are more important.
Suddenly he was inarticulate, wasn't he?
Well, and meanwhile, of course, you look at the list. The Washington Examiner has a great list of all the ACORN affiliates and how much federal money they've received, from the Housing Corporation to various offshoots of ACORN, and $16 million here, $7 million there, $2 million there. I mean, you add this all up, and this is not an insignificant amount of money.
Definitely, it's not an insignificant amount of money. But what's really interesting is that Patrick Gaspard, who is the new Karl Rove, even though he's more low pro, he has a much lower profile than Karl Rove had in Bush's White House. He was Bertha Lewis's right-hand man in New York ACORN for years. So it's almost as if ACORN has an earpiece in President Obama's ear, telling him what to say nowadays.
Well, what was his position exactly? He was clearly one of the most important officials in ACORN before the year 2003, right?
Well, yes, he was political director, which is roughly the same title he has in the White House now. He was the fixer, the guy who solved problems for ACORN, who oversaw, to an extent, their lobbying efforts, and who was just involved in all aspects of political management within the ACORN empire.
Well, I think about the architect Karl Rove and all the influence that he had in the Bush White House. Clearly, Patrick Gaspard has to have the president's ear. And clearly, when this whole ACORN thing blew with the prostitute and sting operation, I would imagine that Gaspard and President Obama had to have had a conversation about it. That would seem odd if they didn't.
I think it's impossible that they didn't talk about it. President Obama is clearly just in damage control mode right now, trying to run away as fast as he can from ACORN. But that's going to be difficult, considering that he goes so far back in his career with ACORN, representing. He led the voter drive for Project Vote in 1992, which is an ACORN affiliate that helped get the far left Congress Senator Carol Moseley Braun elected, 1992, Democrat, Illinois, and he's lectured ACORN officials. He has trained ACORN activists. He represented them in court in that ballot access case, ACORN versus Edgar. And he's engaged in all sorts of litigation, not necessarily representing ACORN, but doing things that ACORN would approve of, such as litigation under the Community Reinvestment Act, which, as you know, ACORN is a big proponent of over the years, and continues to be. They want to strengthen it even now after the damage it caused to the economy by inflating the subprime mortgage bubble that subsequently burst. So he's just so involved at so many levels with ACORN that it's just impossible for him to whitewash it.
Well, the question now, of course, Matthew, is the question of funding, federal funding. Both the House and Senate have voted to revoke federal funding from ACORN. The president punted on the question when specifically asked by Stephanopoulos. Now the Patrick Gaspard connection is fully flushed out. You, Red State, I know Glenn Beck has been on this. We have to see at some point that you can't continue to wave off these concerns. I mean, whether you're talking about the sting operation by those two young journalists, or an issue that I care most about, which is the push that ACORN was involved in with making sure that the low-income set was able to easily get loans for housing. And we know that in the end was a fairly significant factor in this whole collapse of our financial system.
Well, it's all part of that thing you've heard of, the Cloward-Piven strategy of orchestrated crisis. It has to do with overloading the system, with causing chaos, because chaos is an opportunity. A crisis is an opportunity to bring about a radical transformation of society. As Rahm Emanuel, he's been pretty open about the advantages of living in chaotic times and how that gives an opportunity to revolutionaries to push their agenda.
Well, and now the chaos is found within the Democrat Party, which I find hilarious. It's
right.
The whole thing's kind of turned on them, Matthew, right? I mean, they were thinking, well, we're going to use this financial turmoil for the benefit of left-wing policies and our global standing. We're going to stand down as a dominant military power, and meanwhile, we'll be able to confuse everyone here at home, so they're going to think they need the federal government more and more. And meanwhile, guess what? The people are smarter than they thought, and the people are onto them, and so now the chaos is their chaos, and we're watching it unfold in their ranks.
You're right.
That's what I love.
It's all just an excuse for greater government control over the economy and over people's lives. Obama and ACORN right now continue to push for greater government control over the financial sector, and it's that strangling of free enterprise that caused this crisis in the first place.
You know what I love? There's a story that came out a couple of days ago, Matthew, about the New York Times hiring a roving reporter to observe and to read various blogs and listen to talk radio so they're not caught flat-footed on stories like, of course, this ACORN story. Well, I just find that hilarious. They're probably reading you now because the New York Times had so much of this with Anita Moncrief. They were working with her for many, many months on a great expose and just dropped it. They just dropped it in the middle of the reporting.
I know reads my stuff, Stephanie Strom of the New York Times.
Yeah, and she's pretty good, isn't she?
She's
I mean, I think it looks like
me on Twitter. I noticed.
She's
pretty good, but she was told to stand down by the higher ups at the New York Times.
Yeah,
she had
but
lots
now
of good stories that she had to bury.
But now, Matthew, they're seeing people like you and Eric Erickson and Michelle Malkin and others beat them to the punch on so many stories that have legs and actually are fairly interesting, even if they can be a little complicated. They're actually really interesting narratives. And so they're like appointing a new reporter to be like an ombudsman on the new media. It's
really
it's hilarious.
It's really embarrassing for them. Whatever happened to the days of investigative journalism? How sad is it that the once proud newspaper of record has been reduced to following guys in pajamas?
Are you in pajamas, Matthew? Are you in pajamas?
Bloggers.
Are you in pajamas right now?
No.
Are you wearing sweat? To me, it sounds like you're wearing sweatpants. Are you wearing sweatpants?
No. I like sweatpants, though. Very comfortable.
Okay. Well, when you're comfortable in an interview, I always think someone's hanging out in their house. They're wearing shorts and sweatpants, and so they're comfortable
I'm standing
talking.
up and I'm pacing a little bit. It relaxes.
Oh, you are? Oh, excellent. Hey, Matthew, we loved your piece on that National Day of Service call. You're doing great work. Keep it up. We're with you. And, Matthew, we observe you as well, along with the old gray lady. All right, you take care. A lot more to get to. We'll be on the China Watch coming up.
I can be the one basically put up the house for her, and then she can perform tricks in the house.